Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Red Tinted Glasses podcast. It is another victory and a huge victory for the Dons this weekend as we closed the gap to Hibs in that race for third. Level on points now with the media darlings themselves. And Phil, hopefully that really puts the pressure on.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. Especially with David Gray now having a new deal. But although it was Saturday's news, much in the spirit of Anne Budge, I think we'll still have to talk about this one, unlike her pleading the fifth.
Yeah, I think we will, of course, speak about the action from the weekend's victory. Calm's not here, but we will still discuss the latest transfer news because there has been some over the weekend. We'll maybe do a bit of a deeper dive when that is announced in finer detail with someone that does tune into this podcast, Alan McCarley, who is a season ticket holder at Western Sydney Wanderers. And of course, we'll end the episode as always by previewing the upcoming game this weekend as the Dons head to Paisley. And Phil, I think our Monday when we were looking into the stats is a bit grim. So if you were looking to be cheered up on this podcast, you might want to tune out before we discuss the St. game.
Yeah, I mean, especially I think I've got PTSD from being stuck in snowstorms trying to get there over the festive period. So yeah, not great for the old positivity scale. But when are we ever that great for the positivity scale on here, Glenn?
Well, we try our best, and we'll go back then to the weekend and that win over Hibs because there is positivity from it, mainly from the victory itself. It felt very much like a must-win game when we discussed this last week on the show, but I guess the opening exchanges were possibly a tad nervy.
Yeah, I think so, and I think probably expected. I think everybody knew how much was kind of riding on Saturday's game. And how important it was for trying to close that gap and put our grasp back on third place. And I think you could kind of feel that, like you say, in the first sort of 15 minutes. But I think after that, it kind of felt like only one team was trying to win that game of football. And I think we did a really good job to sort of settle the nerves after that early spell.
Yeah, and again in that kind of opening exchanges, a little bit on the dimimit of maybe showing some early signs of nerves once again. And I watched back Sports Scene a little bit. We'll come on to the Sports Scene's overall coverage of the game, but kind of brought me back a little bit to our discussion where it kind of in the early stages, better teams would punish us, and despite the run Hibs are on, thankfully they didn't punish us. And I'm kind of speaking about the Scottish Cup final coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of credit's got to be given to Alfie Dorrington and Matt Knister on that front. I think they again their partnership grows week on week. I think Alfie particularly just seems to improve week on week, and I think they did a really good job at really shutting down the main threats that Hibs would have. I mean, even like Sir Martin Boyle having a really quiet afternoon apart from his sort of shot that flashed past the far post early doors, but yeah, no, I think we stuck to our game plan pretty well, and I think in the end it obviously paid tuition to the fact, like I say, I think Hibs were really probably the more nervy out of the two of us with the way that they kind of set up.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I spoke to Michael Monan after the game and, said I was really surprised by how Hibs kind of approached the game. I thought, and I know we discussed this, that they might try and maybe look to exploit the fact that we went to extra time the weekend before. They've had a couple of weeks rest, but as Graham Gibb says in the comments, they got caught out by playing for a draw and hoping to win. And, in that first half, as you said, they maybe got their tactics a little bit spot on. The one thing that kind of caught us out was their high line, because there was a number of times we were offside and we just either didn't play the right pass or the runner went a little bit too early. But the intent certainly to win the game certainly felt more so from an Aberdeen side. I know we'll maybe speak about some of the Hibs chances as well, but I certainly thought the better football was coming from our side.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Hibs set themselves up in a very particular way, which again was kind of strange because they've got like some Martin Boyle with ounces of pace, and I feel like they just didn't quite get the ball in the channel enough for him. They just went very direct, and like I say, I think Dorrington and Canisters swept that up really comfortably. But like I say, you could see exactly what they were trying to do was to kind of soak up the pressure a little bit, play a high line, and try and catch on the counter. And to be fair, I thought we coped with it well for the most part on Saturday.
Yeah, and as I mentioned already with Sportscene, in terms of that high line that Hibs did, when we did get in behind, we did create a couple of good chances. There was a number of corners that we forced, but none of the chances deemed good enough for the Sportscene highlight package. I remember watching the game back and I was like, I know I had a few pints before the game, but I was sure we created something worthy in the first half, especially. But interesting that the narrative that Sportscene wanted to go down was that we were kind of creative without being clinical. And I know, again, this is maybe a bit of a pet peeve of yours, particular, trying to score the perfect goal or play an extra pass when we didn't need to. I certainly felt that was very evident from our point of view at times on Saturday.
Yeah, no, I think it's been a prevalent prevalent part of our game all season, really. I think I've raised it a bunch of times, the fact that we always seem to look a little bit scared to have a shot from outside the box and do maybe try and play one or two passes too many, take one too many touches that aren't really needed. So yeah, part of that I agree with. Like you say, I think if you'd watched that Sportscene package without actually having sat in the stadium and watched the full 90, you would have honestly thought that Hibs were hard done by, which is just absolutely crazy editing from the BBC.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I know there was a lot of talk about Hibs being favourites for this game, but all the kind of feedback, I guess, on the back of it, for those that watch Sky Sports News will have seen Ref Watch today, and Hibs disallowed goal in the first half. Dermot Gallagher calling the decision soft for the foul, which I believe the referee gave for a foul on Mitov. I know Dermot Gallagher said it was a foul on the defender, but I mean, are we just going to blatantly ignore it? Didn't look like the ball even crossed the line. And
Yeah,
I think that's about as close as Hibs came.
yeah, no, absolutely. I think that part has been entirely missing of any sort of gripes I've seen on Twitter, or like you say, during Ref Watch, etc. I also don't think enough's being made of really Aberdeen's match winner Rocky Bashiri. I noticed when I was watching back the highlights earlier today that he stops a ball from going into the Aberdeen net from a corner as he tries to turn it in, and then obviously later laying it on a plate for Kevin Nisbet. But yeah, just absolutely. Yeah, some of the narrative that you've seen between the BBC and Hibs fans on Twitter have been a bit crazy. I'm not sure if it's maybe to do with the haymakers from security, maybe
Yeah.
messing with their head a little bit.
Yeah. Colin Gale speaking about, in general, it was a very good performance on Saturday. A number of players played well and a brilliant goal from Nisbet. However, the defence at set pieces needs work. Kind of good to kind of bring that in when Hibs' other clear-cut opportunity of the first half was a header from Josh Campbell. I have to admit, I thought it was an excellent save from Mitov at the game. However, it did in fact hit the outside of the post. But we've already spoken about the defending of Knusters and Dorrington, and again, excellent for them to grab another clean sheet. But on Colin's point about defending at set pieces, do you agree? Because even into the second half, Rocky Bashiri, who you've already mentioned, has to do better with the header he has in the second half. And I think again, Josh Campbell actually has a header that he flashes wide. So certainly something to work on over the course of the next 5 games.
Yeah, I mean the way that Hibs play, obviously with a three at the back, they've got that extra kind of man of height, shall we say, in the squad as an additional centre half, as well as having players that are strong in the area. You've mentioned Josh Campbell, kind of butcher his name, is it Kukurevich or whatever he's called, the Ukrainian striker as well. He's quite a big lad. But yeah, I think defending set pieces, again, it's been a bugbear of mine this season. I've done a special little bit because I kind of had a feeling this was coming up for those on YouTube. Little bit of zonal marking, get it done. I'm fed up, Glenn. I'm fed up with zonal marking. It causes more hassle than worth. And yeah, no, I agree with Colin's point. I think it is something that does need a little bit of work.
I like how you held that close enough to the mic so the sound effect of you ripping it up will come through for those actually on audio as well. Half time, obviously, 0-0. I remember my tweet at full time on my own page saying that I felt the game overall, obviously happy to see us win, but personally, I felt it was a scrappy game. Do you agree that kind of it was scrappy, or as much as we played well, like where do you sit on that kind of scrappy game, but no, we actually played well and did deserve the win kind of debate?
I don't think it was scrappy. I think nervy, like we said earlier. I think you could definitely sense there was some nerves in the game. I think we played some really tidy stuff at points, and I think especially when we did make those changes on about the hour mark, I feel like we did kind of sharpen up our play a little bit. Yeah, scrappy, I'm not too sure. I definitely, it was a strange one. For being a nervy game, I didn't quite feel like we were going to lose it. I thought worst case scenario it was going to end in a draw. Like I say, I very much believe that Hibs were playing for that draw from early doors. The amount of time that was taken at every goal kick and throw in, I think they felt like there was more to lose than to gain. So yeah, scrappy, I'm not too sure on. Like I say, I think there was some really tidy stuff played, but perhaps maybe just not as clinical and maybe no one wanting to maybe make that mistake.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting your point there about Hibs not kind of wanting to lose. It was almost like they put their all into the opening 15-20 minutes to try and get that early goal. When they didn't, it was like, right, let's just put balls into the box, because that's where they were kind of getting success from set pieces, but absorb as much pressure from Aberdeen. And I guess we went back to the early months of Jimmy Tillin and relying on our bench for the success that we got from that. But Shayden Morris has been a player where we've seen a lot of success from the bench. Now, I know he's tuned into the episode tonight, and I couldn't help but kind of thinking about some of the comments that John Keelo's been putting in about Shayden Morris starting and the kind of lack of defensive effort that we see from Shayden. I know he was very vocal in those comments around the Cup semi-final preview that we did, and personally felt that was very evident again this weekend. And Alexander Jensen was having a tough time, I think, throughout with the lack of defensive help he was getting from Shayden.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was my gripe as well. That defensive side of this game, I thought attacking wise, he was doing okay. He was going, Glenn.
Was he though? Like,
I think he was doing okay. I think he was doing a job and occupying a fullback. It's by far not his most effective game, and I think you've came up against the two teams with probably in my opinion the best left backs in league in Penrice and Cadden. So I think he did struggle a little bit there, and I think that defensive side was really noticeable, and I think we thought that would be the case. Like I say, Cadden bombs up. Campbell gets himself wide. If Boyle decides to switch wings, you've got another, really quick and clinical winger on Jensen's side. And I do think that's where they were finding most of their joy.
Yeah, and I think it kind of probably over the last kind of couple of games, kind of given the performance, maybe lack of impact is probably a better word than performance. From Shayden, it will reignite the debate. Certainly when we come to the St Mirren game about whether he deserves to start or not. I certainly think there will be lots of calls for him to continue in that place, but we need him to be effective, because I think it's a problem that we've had in general when our wingers aren't effective. Neither are we at the top end of the pitch. I guess the next then question is at the top end of the pitch, because Pape, we're going to come on to him and his performance. I'm yet to kind of see the partnership that him and Kevin Nisbet could strike up. I think once again, similar to Hampden, I think Kevin Nisbet comes alive when Obde Dabag comes on in Pape's place. Your thoughts on Pape's performance at the weekend?
Yeah, again, he had flashes where he looked like he was going to impact the game, and then either played the wrong pass or took too many touches, or just didn't do anything effective with the space he had. And I think that's why I personally got quite annoyed at him coming off. It was similar to the Rangers game. I know that he wants to make an impact and he wants to affect the game, and obviously that's what you want all your players to do. But at that point, he wasn't offering us anything of that nature. So I think for him to sort of strop off was quite frustrating, especially at 0-0 when he's eating into the time. And you're just thinking, look, because at that point we were starting to put a little bit of pressure on Hibs. And you just kind of thought, look, get off, let us, keep the foothold going. And like you say, I think when Daba could, come on and sort of play on the shoulders of those Hibs defenders, like you say, I think Kevin found a lot more space and he looked a lot more comfortable. And I think the disallowed goal was evidence of that. It was the first time we'd really sort of seen him, get in that pocket, drifting in unmarked into the middle of the box, and obviously unfortunate that Jeppe Ockels was offside. But even our style of play at that point changed. I mean, that disallowed goal entirely reminded me of early season Jimmy Thielen. Shinnie playing it quick into the channel, Jeppe right in behind and a quick ball across the box. And again, I feel like we just don't get that with Pape because he's so adamant on trying to pick the ball up and be the ball carrier, which is great in certain scenarios, but it just wasn't what we needed on Saturday against Hibs.
Yeah, and I think there was a couple of comments. I think Graham Gibb mentioned one of them about kind of how some of exactly what you're saying, our transitions and the kind of speed of the play slowed down every time we kind of went through Pape because he takes a couple of extra touches. But I mean, I know I've mentioned it week in, week out, but I just couldn't get over his reaction to being subbed this weekend. It was like a petulant schoolboy. And exact same frustrations as you. You can't at 0-0 in a must-win game sit there, bottom lip out, and trudge off the pitch. You could sense the frustration from totally around the ground. But I have to say, I was actually quite surprised at Shaden's reaction as well, because I thought he was just as sulky as Pape as well.
Yeah. I think the pair of them. I think it was, I think part of our success this season has been how together everybody seems to be, in that sort of spirit and sort of understanding that no matter even if you get subbed, you've still got a role to play. You've been part of the team. It's not going to hamper anything in the next week. I mean, God, how many weeks have we had an unchanged team now? This is like a luxury. Under Jimmy Thielen, it's usually a few changes up to this point. So I really didn't quite get. I mean, even Scott McLennan, who comes up on the Fourth Reds bus with myself, he'd even put in that was the first time he'd noticed it because he'd never noticed it against the Rangers game, and even he'd said he couldn't quite wrap his head around the sort of sulking attitudes coming off.
Yeah, I mean, I know I mention it every week and folk are probably like, oh, get over it. But I think, yeah, anyone who hasn't noticed it, it was hard not to this weekend. What do you think Jimmy Tilleen makes of that sort of reaction? It just kind of comes to me there as you mentioned that kind of togetherness within the squad that he's kind of spoke about. But it's almost a clear show of discontent, if that's the right word. But in the fact that then it plays into the crowd getting frustrated at a player as well, it's really not a good look.
Yeah, I mean, I think Pape, it's someone mentally that I think Jimmy's done a lot of work with, and I think there is still work to be done. I mean, how many times was said about him maybe getting a little bit hot-headed, and he clearly is a player that wears his heart on his sleeve, whether it's a beaming smile on his dance moves in the good times or like Graham said, perhaps being disappointed at his own performance and like I've said, maybe disappointed in the fact that he wants to make that impact. And I think that's kind of how Jimmy will look at it. I don't think he'll see it as a negative. I think he'll probably try and take it as positive as he can. I think he knows that Pape wants to contribute. He knows that he wants to, finish off what has been, by all means, a good season for him in the most positive way that he can. And I think, he's got to kind of use this to kind of fuel Pape a little bit and just sort of say that, show why you should be on for the full 90, try and get, a bit more of a contribution going.
Yeah, and I think, the point that Graham made there about, players being disappointed in their own performances. I kind of find it a bit ironic. Obviously, we've got Player of the Year on Thursday night, and for those of you that follow us on our social media platforms will have seen that we were doing a raffle for a couple of seats for Thursday night's event, and thank you to all of you that entered. We managed to, with the excess money, donate £80 to the Ultras Aberdeen Cup final display, and we've also done a £50 donation to our charity partner Lifestars as well. So great to be able to help two worthwhile causes in that. But with Thursday night in mind, it feels like Shaden Morris is the likely candidate to win Player of the Year. Kind of going on that comment of Graham, do you think there's a bit of disappointment in kind of some of his performances, I guess, leading up to the event? I don't know if that's maybe even playing on his mind, but it very much feels like we should have had a player of the quarter because that seems to be, we've had one good player every couple of months. There's nobody kind of really stayed consistently at the same level throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that Matt Canister signed so late because I think he would have been my shoe-in for Player of the Year. But yeah, no, I think with Shaden, I want to say it's probably not playing on his mind, but you know, the talk of new contracts and obviously as we'll come on to later, the sort of transfer news as
Mhm.
well. He's now playing for his spot. He's at the point where he should be trying to get a start. Wherever he goes, he should be getting consistent minutes under his belt. And like you say, I think it's probably frustration as well that from where he has been since about Ross County
Mhm.
to now, he maybe hasn't consistently been at that top level. And I think obviously he's a player that wants to be at that top level.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, as you say, it's that probably general frustration of a lack of consistency on a personal level. But we'll see who picks up the awards on Thursday night. Certainly looking forward to that. In terms of impacts and players that we've already spoken about, I feel like I should give you the floor for Jeppe Ockels because I think he did have a good impact. I know I slated you last week for calling him a game changer, but I do feel he changed the game, grabbing the assist that never was for Kevin Nisbet's goal, but looking dangerous on that left wing when he came on, certainly for me, more so than he has in previous weeks. But more so wanting to speak about Jamie McGrath because again we spoke last week about will he, won't he, be in the squad and kind of what performance we would get out of him. But I think it's for the criticism we fired Jamie's way, in light of him signing a pre-contract with Hibs, I think we'll have to put our hands up and say fair play because I don't think you can question the level of commitment that he's shown not only in that semi-final appearance against Hearts but also on Saturday when he was called upon again. Going back to your point about that togetherness within the squad.
Yeah, I mean, well, firstly, yeah, mate, love him, always going to love him. Hope to sign him because I just think he's brilliant. Um, there's a little bit of talk previously in the Pataudry Bar pre-match about Ockles potentially being a player to use on the right, but I just love him on the left and being able to cut in on his right foot. And like I said, just hope that goal's coming. But yeah, definitely getting sharper game by game. And echoing your sentiment on Jay McGrath as well. I've been a vocal critic. If Scott McLennan's tuning in the morning on audio, as he often is, he was giving me some pelters about my Jamie McGrath views. But yeah, I've got to hold my hands up and say fair play. There's no doubts that he is being extremely professional about it all. When he did come on, I did wonder what was going to happen, but he got stuck into the dirty work, and he did make a very positive impact.
Mm.
And I think I'm going to have to again sort of go back on my statement and say if Jimmy thinks he's the right man to come off the bench or even start going into this run of games, then by all means, yep, fair enough. I've gonna have to eat my words there.
Yeah, I mean, if he's the right man to come on and make a difference, that he's part of our squad between now and the end of the season. But I've seen a few people mention it, and I was asked this pre-Sunday ahead of my round of golf. Um, a pre-contract means nothing if there was a chance to help Jamie rip that pre-contract up and keep him at Pataudry, is it too late now, or would you be in for that?
I just, as much as, like I say, he is a good player and he has shown it in his appearances these past couple of weeks. I just think financially, from what it seems like Hibs are offering him, I just don't quite think it's worth it for us.
Mhm.
And I think it really does just come down to that financial aspect.
And I guess we've seen, and we'll kind of come on to his performance, is Dante Polvara. Is he someone that could likely step up and fill that gap? The only thing that I would say about the Dante Polvara and Jamie McGrath comparison is that I don't think he's more likely to play, like Dante's not more of a winger in comparison to Jamie McGrath, so there's not that flexibility in that position. But yet again, in terms of speaking about impacts, what a performance from Dante Polvara.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant again. I mean, I think we even spoke about it last season. The idea of Dante Polvara on the 10 is still something that I just absolutely adore. Just, I mean, his ability to keep that ball in the corner for obviously for Hibs, what felt like about 20 minutes, but it was in reality, I think it was about 3.5 minutes. He managed to basically keep that ball in the corner, was utterly superb. And again, just his ability to get his head up and pick a pass out, and he reads the game so well to break up attacks. Yeah, I'm really hoping that if he can get himself back to that area of fitness, because obviously missed pre-season this year, which has a massive effect for any professional footballer trying to catch up after that. But I think definitely going into next season, if we can somehow make him a sort of mainstay in the team, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, and I can't believe he got booked for time wasting in the corner in that manner, given how long it was taking Hibs to take goal kicks. That was just ridiculous. But the other thing as well that really impresses me is his ball carrying ability and the way he kind of drives the team up the pitch. We saw, I'm pretty sure it was him that had that driving run through the middle, and he was brought down. And then after the free kick, I just kind of stood there cupping his ears and just, waving his hands just to get the crowd going. And there was a real sense, at that point that kind of, again, going back to the early part of the season, that there was a goal coming, and there was the belief, certainly amongst the players, that a goal was coming. The fans maybe needed a little bit of convincing, but it was good to see, again, speaking about the connection that Jimmy Tillene and the players speak about, having that with the fans. It got them back on side. And certainly the last 10 minutes, once we did score, the atmosphere, the belief around the whole stadium, it was that together as one feeling that we've been really trying to build throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see it even, I've seen a few clips on Twitter and TikTok and what have you about, with Dante pre-match outside the stadium. He seems to have time for everybody and takes photos, speaks away to them. And, we had it last year. I mean, even the fact he let you, of all people, sit on his lap at Player of the Year. It's a man that clearly has his way, gift of the gab, perhaps. But yeah, just a great sort of guy to have around the club, and like John's put in the comments there, try to get him tied down for a few more years as well should be something we're really looking at seriously.
Yeah, and I guess another thing in terms of looking to tie down a player, do we look to tie down Kevin Nisbet? Because what a moment of quality we saw, kind of in the instinctiveness of his finish that was rightly ruled out for offside earlier on in the game. That was, for me, a very good finish. But you just don't teach that. And, the reaction from Willie Miller, for those that have been listening on Open on Mics, is absolutely phenomenal. How he manages not to swear during that. But yeah, I don't think Kevin Nisbet could place that any better.
No, and speaking about trying not to swear, Kevin almost slipped up in
Yeah,
his Red TV interview as well, and I echo his sentiments. I mean, thank fuck he did score it.
yeah,
But yeah, honestly, it's the sign of a man that's getting to the level we all kind of expected him to be at. A lot of us really had our first sort of glimpses at him when he did have that season with Hibs before he went off down to Millwall.
mhm,
Um, but yeah, that finish, I mean, falling backwards, off balance, you've not really had a sniff all game apart from that disallowed goal. And to control it into the top corner like that, and then no muted celebrations either, which I absolutely love. I don't care if you've played for a club before, you score a goal like that, you've got to give it the big one. And yeah, I mean, I would love it if we could keep him because I think we're finally, like I say, starting to see the best of it. I just think the financials of it, we'd probably have to pay Millwall a decent fee, mainly just for the form that he's been on. But I think the wages will be
mhm.
so hard to match unless he's willing to take that big pay cut because he enjoys it so much, which is definitely probable.
Yeah.
Um, I think it would be hard to be able to keep him here beyond his loan.
Yeah, I think that's for me the big concern is that wage, what he's on, and I think that will be the stumbling block, as you say, unless he's prepared to take a significant wage cut. Be a big fan of him giving it absolute loyalty after finding the top corner, and absolutely when it's a strike like that, given the importance, and I think as well it just shows kind of he's bought into being here. There isn't that kind of respect for his former club as well. And I know Neve obviously captured the kind of celebrations of him running into the corner and the celebrations from the red shed, which we shared here on our YouTube channel as well. And I know he's watching along tonight. Paul Donaldson, for anyone on YouTube, he's captured the goal. Paul, I have no idea what you were doing filming that passage of play or why, but I actually think you must not sit that far along from Neve's dad. But what an absolute brilliant video that is for the angle of it from the main stand as well. So yeah, after you've finished, if you haven't seen it, go over to Paul's channel and watch the angle there, because yeah, it's just a shame we can't include that for goal of the season, because I think that would definitely be pushing Topi's effort close.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know it's included in the Sky Sports
Mm,
one, which will no doubt just be won by an old firm team because whenever they open these to the public, it's an old firm fest. But yeah, and similar to what Michael Taylor's put in the comments earlier about the goal cranking up that atmosphere. I mean, um, yeah, I don't think I've seen photography like that in a while. All four stands, just an absolute raucous atmosphere. Um, and again, I think that was something that fed down onto the pitch and post match. Everybody just absolutely loving it. And again, like you say, it just kind of feeds into that connection that the
mhm.
club seems to have into the stands now, and a brilliant way to win a football game. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, well, it is a goal worthy of winning every game, and I think yeah, you're absolutely right. Seeing that atmosphere is probably not since that kind of again early part of the season, but even then, it felt like another step up on Saturday in terms of the atmosphere. It was almost like everybody inside that stadium fully believed that third place is more than capable, and obviously getting that win at the weekend, yes, not still in our own hands, but has really put the pressure on three teams this weekend. We head to Paisley, and it's Hibs v Dundee United at Easter Road. From an Aberdeen point of view, obviously, if we were to pick up the 3 points at St Mirren, what's the best result from an Aberdeen persuasion? Do you think a draw at Easter Road?
Yeah, I'm inclined for a draw. Obviously, a Dundee United win lets us leapfrog Hibs, but then it keeps Dundee United breathing down our necks. So I think
Yeah.
a draw with a few ACLs in between would be the dream scenario, I think.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that pans out. Right, before we speak about the game at the weekend, let's divert on to some transfer talk. At the weekend, Scott Burns kind of broke a story that Tom Ritchie looks set to leave the club in the summer. It's a player we've spoken about already on the podcast in terms of goalkeeping backup alongside Ross Doohan. Do you think that news kind of coming out maybe does signal Ross is more likely to stay, or potentially him away as well? There, we'll get it out eventually, and a couple of new goalkeepers coming in.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me it signals that there's at least talks with Ross that have been going positively. Whether he does decide to sign that deal or not is yet to be seen. But I can't really blame Tom if it sort of is his decision to want to move away. I mean, at 22 now, again, similar to how we were speaking about Shane Morris earlier, he kind of needs to be getting game time consistently under his belt, where he is the first choice option. And he does have that experience throughout the pyramid. His time at Bucky and Bonnyrigg, etc. And he's been in and around the sort of first team matchday squads. So I think he is at the point now where he should be given that run. But I've no doubts whether Ross decides to extend his deal or not is we'll have people lined up. I did see that story that Scott Burns quickly rubbished about the I think is it Tayport Nigerian 6'8" goalkeeper.
Yeah, agent determined to get him a decent move.
Yes, but I'm sure we'll have goalkeepers that don't play in the sixth tier probably lined up, I think.
Yeah, I think if anything, Tom Ritchie's departure screams Peterhead, given their league win at the weekend and promotion to League One, really throwing it back with the Dons connection with Cammy Smith setting up Peter Pollitt for the winner in that game. Another player who looks set to leave Pittodrie this summer in no real surprise is Jack MacKenzie. Someone that's not featured much since the turn of the year. Maybe the surprise is the destination, maybe not actually. League One bound Plymouth Argyle looking likely, or one of the front runners to sign Jack MacKenzie. Surprising to see him head to League One, given he was maybe hoping for the Championship.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is still a way that Plymouth can stay up. I think it'll take a massive goal difference swing and get absolutely scudded, I think.
Yeah, I think actually Derby scored very late on, so it's actually, I think they are all but down now.
They're all but down. Oh, well, yeah. I mean, it seems like a strange one to sort of languish away in League One. The money is surely not that different to what you could be getting here, as well as obviously the potential opportunity European football. It does seem very odd to me. I know that they're quite a good, as much as we use it for us when people move, a bit of a stepping stone club. The likes of Morgan Whittaker and Ballymumba from Plymouth have gone on to do quite well at getting moves to bigger Championship or Premiership teams. So whether it's that's what's kind of in the works, but a bit of a strange one in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I think, as you say, money talks for certain players as well. One player that has been touted over the weekend as a possible incoming to Pittodrie, but Jimmy Tilleen remaining tight-lipped on it, is Western Sydney Wanderers forward Nicolas Milanovic, the Australian Croat, rumoured to be joining the Dons on a multi-year deal, however many that means, for a rumoured fee of 400,000. A player who plays on the right but with a strong left foot, liking to cut inside. 12 goals this season, 6 assists, and I think last season had 9 goals and 5 assists. So building slowly. As I said, if that deal does get announced, we'll hope to have a conversation with Alan McCarley, who is a season ticket holder for his current club. But if that signing was to go through, does that potentially, I think Mark Robertson already put it in the comments, spell the end for your beloved Jeppe Ockels, given the fee that is being associated with Jeppe? But what does it also then potentially mean for the likes of Vinny Bizaouin, currently out injured and looking to return next season, but also current on loan winger Ryan Duncan? Would either of them then have a future at the club?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it's a move that does intrigue me quite a fair bit. Obviously, you know, the A League is, potentially a bit less. Or well, what I was looking for is a bit more of a step up to come to Scottish football than to play in the A League. So it'll be interesting to see how he sort of translates over. But a winger that likes to cut in and get goals is right up my street. Hence why I
Mm.
quite like Jeppe Ockels. I'm hoping, like I say, I'm probably the only one that is hoping that's not spilling the end for Jeppe. But in terms of Vinny and Ryan Duncan, I'm thinking that with Europe on the horizon, Duncan would maybe be the more likely choice to stay. I think, obviously, with us losing Tom Ritchie, losing Jack MacKenzie, having that sort
Mm.
of homegrown players from the team, and I feel like Vinny probably has a little bit more resale value than Ryan would have. Again, another player that I hope we don't lose, because again, I still feel like there's a player that can contribute something to this team if he could just be fully fit. But yeah, no, definitely a move that, once the scar's off the head and it's all confirmed, then yeah, we'll be looking forward to seeing him in that team.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting because I suppose Vinny maybe retains some sort of versatility. We've seen him in the number 10. He could play on the left as well. Certainly in the early parts of the season, he seemed to be a player that Jimmy Tillene liked as well. And, looking ahead to the weekend, a point is all we need to secure European football. In what form that is obviously remains to be seen, depending on the Scottish Cup final. So, the potential is there to kind of need a little bit of a bigger squad. And I think, one thing that we've even seen this season as well, when we have been affected by injuries, is the strength and depth, more so the quality of it. When we speak about Nicolas Milanovic, kind of specifically, and looking to, different markets, looking down to the A League as opposed to the Scandi leagues, there are going to be critics and question marks around our own youth development. And I think they're right to be asked and mentioned, especially with the club continuing to push DNA. I got my annual phone call that a DNA discount was applicable because I'd renewed my season ticket so early. But until they remove that loyalty points from DNA, I'll refuse continuously. But as John Kelo points out, you've got Adam Ensley and Dylan Lobban doing well on the wings for Cove. So that's two youngsters that we could reinvest, two youngsters that have come through our academy. Is it fair for people to start asking questions around what sort of talent we can expect to come through the academy into that first team, when that is what that kind of DNA section is about, is developing that footballing talent and operations?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, even, like I said, Adam Emsley's been revelation at Cove, as has Finlay Marshall as well. Has had another good season.
Mm.
Alfie Bavidge, I'm pretty sure, made it into the PFA team this season for League One.
Yeah.
So, we've clearly got players that are capable. That just the chance to prove it in a red jersey seems to elude them. Even likewise, the fact that we lost likes of Lewis Perry, and we were even looking to lose Carroll as well
Mhm.
before they'd even had a sniff in the first team, because they get snapped up from down south so early on. I think it is right people ask questions. It's obviously not just an Aberdeen issue, it's a league-wide issue of under 21s kind of getting that chance. So
Mm.
it is something I would like to see the club kind of take a bit more of a line on. But at the end of the day, it's a results-based business, and
Mhm.
Jimmy's trying to just put out the best team that he can do. And often with how tight it has been, especially at this point in the season, it's hard for him to justify throwing in the young boys in such tight games.
Yeah, I kind of agree on that point as well, and I think it is absolutely a league-wide issue where we are struggling to see. Both of us do enjoy a Scotland game as well, and it's disappointing not to see kind of young Scottish players coming through and getting the opportunities. But unfortunately, when you're operating in a results-based business, like Alan Burrows and Dave Cormack are going to, want to get what's best for the club. And actually, speaking on both Alan Burrows and Dave Cormack as well, we mentioned obviously the kind of donation that we'd done to that cup final display. I think got to shout out the donation that both those two gentlemen did, as well as the fans project to that display as well. Great to see, high value commitment from our board to the fans, again reaffirming that connection that is there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was close to about £3,000 between the fans project, Cormac and Burrows donations.
Mm-hmm.
So really good to see them getting behind a fan-led display. And yeah, I mean, even since the back of the semi-final against Hearts, there's no doubt the absolute love that our chairman has for the club and the city and everything associated with it. And yeah, hopefully he can be in attendance on Thursday night. I'm not too sure whether he'll be in the country or running stuff back home in Atlanta. But yeah, it'd be good to see him there, either on or off the sauce.
I was going to say 3 bottles of wine. He is 100% going to be there. Not so much transfer talk in a way, but someone, and apologies, I can't remember who tweeted us this at the weekend, but Michael Taylor has also kind of come up with the suggestion. Now, if Neve's watching, the probably thought of Nicky Devlin departing will cause her severe heartbreak. But Michael Taylor says, do you think Nicky Devlin will want to transfer away next season if he's still not playing much football, which probably will be the case given he's second choice at right back just now? Do you think, kind of given his age, he will be happy being a squad player, or do you think he is that type of character who will want to be playing regularly? Again, with one mind on Europe, we might need that depth, and we can't just rely on Alexander Jensen for 90 minutes week in, week out. We saw what we did to Nicky Devlin when we were doing that in his case.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one because I've got no doubts that Nicky wants to be playing, because that's just the type of player that he is. And I think is the fact that he did play so much last season, I think was probably partly down to the fact that he had asked to play more than anything, because he seems like the type that hates missing a game through whatever reason, through tiredness, injury, whatever it might be. But like you say, at his age, would he get another move on the same sort of money he is with us, with the chance to potentially play in Europe? I'm not so sure. Similarly, I don't think we would let him go for free, because I think he's got, is it 2 years he'll have left on his deal, perhaps? Someone might be able to keep me right in the comments there. But I think he's perhaps got 2 years left in his deal, so I'm not sure who would be willing to pay the money to get him out of his deal at, I think it's 32 he is now.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is like paying him out that deal, although you never know if Livingston get promotion. He maybe wants one final swan song, is that right? Yeah, you know what I mean, with them. So we'll see, but I'm sure there is going to be plenty of transfer chat to come over the summer, and certainly as we wind down towards the end of the season, I'm sure we're not going to take a leaf out of Jim Goodwin's book and start announcing our vice captain and what that won't be getting extended deals before the season's actually out. But that'll certainly keep us going content-wise between now and the end of the season. But of course, we do have a huge game coming up this weekend. It is a trip to St Mirren, and I'll start off with some of the stats that I sent into our group chat earlier. We're looking for our first victory in 8 in all competitions in Paisley. The last victory, of course, that 2-0 Scottish Cup victory back in 2020. No league victory down there since 2018, a 2-1 win where both Stevie May and Sam Cosgrove scored. Yes, that really does show how long ago it was. And maybe another kind of interesting one for me this weekend is no clean sheets in our last 6 games against St Mirren. This will be an interesting one for that back line, given how well they've performed, if they can kind of outperform the last 6 games against St Mirren.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it'll be a slightly different task they'll have in the past few meetings. Obviously, Olasanya's off to Houston Dynamo. Fair play to St Mirren for cashing in. on that, and also thank you for getting rid of him before you played us, because I was already starting to get cold sweats thinking about him running into the channel and through on goal, as we've seen a few times this season. And obviously, it's looking like Mikael Mandron and Jonathan Ayunga will be the sort of the pair they go with for the remainder of the season, which obviously is a little bit more physical in nature. So perhaps a lot more of the dirty work and winning long balls for Knister and Dorrington most likely on Saturday. But yeah, I mean they line up quite similar to how Hibs and Rangers lined up against us when they came to Tawdry, that sort of three at the back with the wing backs. And it's a shape that we've done quite well against, I like to think. We do quite well at exposing the spaces that do sort of show up if we can get in behind on the channel. But it's not a place we've got a great track record with. But like I say, I think the fact that Olasanya's not there is kind of filling me with a little bit of quiet optimism, which is quite
Yeah,
nice.
and I think, it was quite funny the fact that St Mirren fans were almost taking the piss out of us. The fact, as you rightly said, the fact that we're celebrating him not being there kind of shows how much we've struggled against them in recent outings as well. I couldn't believe as well that the last 10 straight games against St Mirren have all seen 3 or more goals in those encounters. So I wonder if we will see a goal fest, or if we're just going to cue a dull 0-0 or 1-0. But I think it will be a difficult game, as Paul Donaldson says in the comments. They did extremely well against Rangers to come from behind on 2 occasions. To be honest, should have taken the lead in that game after Michael Mandron inexplicably misses an open goal. So, they can cause us problems. And as much as you say that we can look to cause St Mirren problems in behind, it's something that they've caused us problems throughout the recent encounters by long balls over the top. Yes, exploiting one particular player in who won't be playing this weekend. But if that is the tactic they employ, I do have a much more confidence in Knuster's and Dorrington's ability to deal with that from what we've seen so far.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's a different Aberdeen team that lines up against St Mirren as well. Obviously, Leighton Clarkson back to being a sort of mainstay in that midfield. Antti Palaversa now being fit enough where he can be starting. Perhaps Dante Povara being in that team. Richard Jensen in it right back. Shinning at left back. There's, as much as we're going to have to sort of tweak ourselves to adjust to this new St Mirren, they're going to have to do the same amount to adjust to us. And like I say, I think goals will be a given. I mean, it's 2 teams that need a result. If St Mirren are wanting to try and push themselves into the top 5, then they're going to have to beat us. Similarly, we're relying on results going our way between Dundee United vs Hibs. So equally, we need to go out and play for the win, which I feel like Jimmy does every week, regardless. So I think it'll be an interesting game. And like I said, I can see there being goals.
Yeah, and I suppose, St Mirren aren't a team, or certainly Stephen Robinson isn't a manager known for giving up. And, let's be honest, St Mirren treat playing us like their own cup final. So their fan base is certainly going to be up for it. And as you say, wanting to keep themselves in the hunt for 5th, because really the game at Paisley and the game at Easter Road, result dependent, does have a huge bearing for 4 clubs and their destinations next season, quite literally, over the course of summer and pre-season plans. And it's going to be, as I say, I feel this is going to be probably our biggest game between now and the end of the season, because it either sets us up for a really good run-in going into that game away to Rangers, or adds that little bit of extra pressure because potentially we're back to being 3 points and kind of undoing that hard work that we earned last weekend. Do you think that actually might be a message from Jimmy Talleen going into this weekend, saying you've done the hard work getting level with Hibs, let's go out and kind of show it wasn't this fluke or undeserved win, as we've kind of talked about the way it's maybe been edited by the West Coast media?
Yeah, I mean, I think that'll be part of it. I think, similarly, Jimmy will be saying what he said all season, and it's just take it game by game, just focus on you and try and block out as much outside noise as you possibly can. I think if we go into that with an eye on the Dundee United Hibs score, we can do ourselves a little bit of danger of maybe getting a little bit comfortable if things are going our way and sort of take the foot off the gas. I think it's part of it will be staying focused and playing the way that we know we can play, and hopefully upsetting the angriest corner in world football, which is that little corner next to the away section.
It's not even the angriest corner, it's the angriest stand in Scottish football. I watched that November game on St Mirren TV because, well, my disdain for listening to Rob McLean on Red TV. And honestly, they must have the angriest fan base in that stand because the amount of moaning and bad language that comes through, it's unbelievable because it's just pretty much like listening to yourself with the football. But yeah, definitely the angriest corner. Just wanted to go back to a point you made, because we didn't cover it from the Hibs game. You spoke about Jimmy Talleen wanting to take games one game at a time. I felt after, and this isn't a criticism or anything, I just wonder if he was just getting himself a little carried away or showing that emotion that he's done so well up to now to kind of keep in with the celebrations at a full time. The players once again holding hands and running up to the red shed and celebrating. There's that photo of him hand in hand with Fletcher Boyd one side, Leighton Clarkson the other, and that beaming Swedish smile that just really reels you in. It's almost like he's finally cracked his emotions. That steely face where he wasn't giving anything away just kind of showed at full time on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a long season. It's all been a new experience for him. So, as much as I've sang his praises for his calm, cool head, it was quite nice to see him crack a wry smile. But it was actually funny you mentioned that, 'cause me and my dad were speaking about this the other day. When the Daily Ranger, the Daily Record, were saying that Rangers should throw the war chest at getting Jimmy Thielen in from Aberdeen, and we got on to the topic of where his future career might land, and my dad's exact words were he's not flamboyant enough for a top league. He's not got the charisma for a top league. He's too level headed, and I kind of didn't understand where he was coming from that. Then I did kind of think, I suppose he has been rather cool, calm, and collected, and he's not a screamer, he's not a shouter, he's not a touchline runner like Jose Mourinho is. He's very much his own type of man. But yeah, it was good to see him lapping up those celebrations on Saturday.
Yeah, he's very methodical and very much trusts in what he preaches, and yeah, it was kind of, I guess, good to see him break character, and it's going to be really interesting to kind of hear from him on Thursday night and his thoughts as we approach these, as I said, kind of final five. Really does feel like 5 cup finals between now and the season, and so far the team and him have handled that pressure and expectation, and I guess it's really going to just be more of, from us as fans, asking them to just have more of the same.
Yeah, exactly. It's we're at the point now where it looks like we are starting to see the best of this 11 that's been out for the past few weeks. Obviously, we mentioned Clarkson being back as a sort of mainstay in that midfield and starting to see the best of his game. Kevin Nisbet on top form. Keskinen's really growing into quite a good winger with his end product. So yeah, as long as, like I say, more of the same, block out the outside noise and just play your game. That's at the end of the day, that's all you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of team news, if we look at from an Aberdeen point of view, you already spoken about the midfield kind of being changed from last time out with Leighton Clarkson and Ante Palaversa in there. I don't see us making any changes defensively. I think it would be wrong to, given the kind of confidence that they're building. Again, we spoke about the same when Ross was in goals. Midfield, again, I'm struggling to see the need to change as much as I'm kind of disappointed in Shaden's recent performances. I'm sure he's just as disappointed and will be wanting to prove some wrongs based on the reaction. And not that he reads it or listens to someone like us. For me, the interesting one, you mentioned whether or not Dante Polvara comes into the starting lineup or not. Tommy Massey had asked us to discuss whether Dante for Pape is the move in the lineup. Is that a possible for you? Because for me, I'm championing Obde Dabag to come in for Pape just purely based on the connection and partnership that I've seen from him and Kevin Nisbet. I think we saw the good and the bad of Obde at the weekend. Learned to take it to the corner under better control. Probably should have scored his chance. Yeah, I think it's a good save, but I'd like to see my striker find the back of the net with that. Um, what do you think if Pape, isn't sulking still and does get taken out of the starting lineup? Who are you putting in his place?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I mean, just going back to your initial point, I think that Dorrington, we've only got him for 5 more games. Let's use him. Let's keep him there and give Tobers pre-season to come back from that injury. But I mean, I think it's a toss-up. It depends on how he's wanting to go about it. I think Ode could easily come in there and put him as the 9 and have Kevin in behind, as we've seen before. Like I've said earlier, I really like Povara, and I think he could really thrive as the 10. And I think his desire and his engine in him as well to press teams is a real asset. And as a ball carrier as well, he kind of fills that similar role to what Pape is sort of there to try and do. He's tall enough and physical enough where he can hold the ball up well. He's great with the ball at his feet, just shrugging off challenges, and he's got a good eye for a pass and to maybe pick out a goal. But yeah, I think if there is to be a change, which I don't think there will be, it would most likely be Pape for somebody.
I'm glad you said what Pape tries to do, because that's right. Doesn't do it to the same effect for sure. Michael Taylor echoing your sentiment there, that he also doesn't think there will be any changes to the starting lineup. I would be surprised if we do stick with a same 11 personally. Neil Archibald saying that Pape gives us an important outball. The one thing I was going to say on Pape going into a game against St Mirren is the physicality side of it. Richard Taylor, Alex Gogic, they'll be absolutely up for a battle, and putting someone like Pape in there for me is a risk, because we've seen he sometimes likes to get drawn into that battle and doesn't always keep the head to the same effect. So that would be my concern, and I could see why you would then prefer to go for somebody like Dante Polvara, in the sense who is a good ball carrier, and maybe that direct running that he can provide would cause more problems in the middle. But Obde also gives us something different, because for me, I actually think he's a better runner than we've still maybe yet to see. I watched him in the semi-final and similarly again at the weekend, where he does a lot of hanging off the shoulder and looking for the run, and sometimes we don't pick that up necessarily with the right ball from midfield. And I just wonder, kind of going back to that point you made about exploiting St Mirren with balls over the top, if Obde is more suited to that in that 9 and moving Kevin Nisbet back into the 10.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely an option. I would like to see a bit more from him to be able to kind of make that judgment. Again, it's similar to what people are questioning of Jeppe Ockels, and in terms of the fact we do have that option to buy him at the end of the loan. Is it worth pulling that trigger? And I think it's kind of hard to make that assessment just now. Obviously, he has scored goals and important goals at that, but we're yet to kind of see him get a good run at it, in my opinion. And I think another route. Again, we do this every week, as if we're going to pick this lineup. But I mean, another route I suppose you've got is putting Pape back out on the wing, like early doors in this season. And do you put Jeppe in the 10, like I keep on trying to pine for? Do you put Povara in that 10? It's there's all these variables that people like us will throw out, and probably won't make any difference at all.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll probably be just like you and Michael Taylor, and there'll be no changes, but it's given us 5 extra minutes to everyone either watching or listening to have to listen to us gibber on. And if you want to listen to us gibber on, feel free to come up and chat to us on Thursday night. Um, and you can just excuse Phil's wine drunken chat. Then we'll apologise in advance for that. But as always, to those that do join us here on the YouTube channel live when we broadcast these episodes, as always, thank you very much to those interacting with the episode. It's really great to see so many of you doing so and also watching along. As Colin Gale said in the comments, please make sure to like the video, subscribe if you're new to the channel as well. And if you're on audio, remember to follow wherever you're listening as well. Until next time, we will see you then.